Hello, everyone, and welcome to School After Hours podcast. I am your host, C. Lee, for this very special episode. For Switch, we have me interviewing my wife, J. Lee, your normal host, as she prepares to head off to the Boost Conference in California as of this recording next week. So say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, so like I said, this is kind of special. She's going to hopefully get a lot of content out of her trip. It's about, I think it's 3-4 days? 4 days. And she'll be doing interviews, a live stream. I think she's going to tell you all about that as we go. So why don't we go ahead and get started? And let's start with a community corner. Do you want to do your famous community corner introduction first?
Community Corner is a segment of the show that allows guests or myself to share tips, advice, or information on a specific topic with young people, families, or community members. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our Community Corner conversation.
Okay. Every episode you ask your guest, what would you like families and community members to know? So now let's switch it around and ask, what, J. Lee, would you like families and community members to know?
I would like family members and community members to know that out-of-school time staff are very, very hard workers, and they work hard for not a lot of pay. So we've had this conversation before on the show about educators, teachers, people that work in education and how little pay that they get. And I'm like, if you look at their check compared to what out-of-school time program staff get paid, you look and shake your head in shame. So one of the things that we are not advocating for in this space is more pay. Not just more pay, but also adequate professional development for staffers, that the ones who make this actually a career because they see themselves doing this for the long haul. Now, turnover for out-of-school time programs can be higher than you see in education. Because of the lack of hours that we get, because it is during after-school time. But also, some of that can stem from lack of training at the same time when it comes to onboarding. So advocating for that professional development is very important. That's why you have conferences like Boost and NAA, all those other wonderful things. So staffers can get the training and the information that they need to bring back to their sites and go ahead and make productive and great plans for the following year, if not the present year, so your children can continue to have access to quality programming.
Well, that's a really great answer. I think it is very important for not only families and community members, but also other organizations to understand there should be a financial investment as well as a professional investment, because as we all know, the country's going through some interesting times in terms of hiring and retention. And so the more transferable skills we can give people, the better. And then also, when you talk about turnover rate like that, the more that an organization invest in developing their talent, the more loyalty, the more skills they develop, they have a chance to move up the ladder, they add more value to the organization, etc. And all that leads perfectly into our topic for today, which is getting conference ready. Specifically in this case, we're talking about the big Boost conference coming next week, where a lot of these topics that we just spoke about and many more will be discussed. But also we're going to talk about how to get conference ready in general, because we all know as professionals in the nonprofit field of any sort, there's always a lot of conferences, whether they're local or national. And so your host, your normal host, J. Lee, today is going to be interviewed by me to talk about those things. So let's jump right in. How did you learn about Boost Conference? And actually, for anyone that may not know, I think a lot of the listeners or regular listeners are professionals in the field, so they probably know. But for posterity, what is Boost Conference and how did you learn about it?
Well, first, let's talk about what Boost Conference is. Boost Conference is a professional development conference for out-of-school time practitioners and in-school time practitioners. But also, it's not just for those individuals or those professionals. Educators also attend this conference too. So if you're attending Boost Conference, you may run across teachers, principals, superintendents, all of the above, all the people within education, because they also are, of course, they're part of that education sector, as is, in and out of school time practitioners. So at Boost Conference, one of the things that I love is that they have a space for podcasters that have educational background or dabble in education in some way, shape, or form to come and talk about some of the issues that may be in their community or highlight very important things that are taking place, not just within the community, but it may be around the world somewhere, and give practical tips and advice on how to tackle particular situations, all those things. But that is one of the things that I think is so cool and makes Boost so unique, is that you'll have a variety of different people from different educational aspects come in and share their expertise, or have other guests from different areas doing great things, sharing their expertise or shedding the light on something that may be happening in a community that you didn't know anything about. And using this platform to kind of share that information to bring awareness to what that issue may be, just in case it pops up in your neighborhood. So that's one of the things that I loved about this portion in just Boost Conference in general. I first learned about Boost when I was looking for a professional organization to join, because at that point I saw myself pursuing a career in out-of-school time programming. So I wanted to become part of a fellowship or an organization that could help me develop my skills, but also build relationships and have mentorship at the same time. So I came across Boost, and I came across the National After School Association and asked about both. I joined NAA and always kept my eye on Boost because NAA travels around there in different places each year. Boost is mainly in California. I'm all the way on the East Coast. So in my mind, I'm like, how in the world am I going to get myself across the, well, not across the pond, but all the way to the other side of this continent? But anywho, after I started, I always kept it in the back of my mind because the people that I asked, they really, really enjoyed it and they had fun at Boost Conference. So I was like, eventually one day I really, really want to go. So fast forward X and Y Z years later, I started the podcast School After Hours during the pandemic. And as we're coming out of the pandemic, I saw that Boost put their applications out for podcasters in education to come and be part of the Boost experience for 2023, as well as they're looking for facilitators for workshops. So I said, this might be the moment. I'm going to go ahead and shoot my shot. Because at this time, I interviewed a couple of people. I was a little bit more comfortable with my content. I knew who I wanted to reach. So it felt like it was the right moment for me to try. And I'm happy that I did. So I downloaded the application, filled out the information, got some help with some of the things to answer, and thankfully hit the submit button. And lo and behold, they said yes. So I'm going to be at Boost in 2023, and I'm really, really excited. It's one of the things that I'm happy that came through for me at this time as I'm building podcasting, but also building in my career as a out-of-school time professional. So I'm really excited.
Yes, and I am excited for her, but I will tell you that as her husband, I am not necessarily looking forward to her literally being all the way across the country, but we're actually going to talk a little bit about that and how to not only get ready for conference in terms of, getting your whatever you're doing, whether you're going for content or you're going for knowledge or you're going for whatever, but also in terms of safety, not just for women, but men and women, if you're traveling, especially without your partner in any way or that kind of thing. But we'll get to that. It is very exciting. And you kind of answered this next question in your first answer there, but why did you apply to be a Podcast Lounge presenter?
I applied because I felt like it was the right time to do it. So at this time, I was doing the podcast School After Hours for about a year. I got a little momentum interviewing different people and felt a little bit more comfortable in the content that I was presenting for the field. So I said this would be a good time for me to take this opportunity and just try. And I encourage not just my students, but anyone that I'm working with in coaching, and is that if you don't try, you'll never know what you can do. So it may be out of your comfort zone. It may be a little uncomfortable, but as was said on the show before, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
True enough. And so we've established that you're going to be in the Podcast Lounge there, and some of the content that listeners can look forward to will be some kind of sound bites and quick interviews as you kind of talk to a lot of the presenters in between sessions and things like that, and some other little things. But one of the big things happening while you're there is the live stream. Now, I think it'll be really cool. We landed on a really good general topic that I think is kind of exciting. And do you want to tell folks what your live stream will be about? And don't worry, if you miss it on the day, hopefully you don't miss it on the day, but if you do, it will definitely be available through our podcast. And I believe the Boost Conference is going to post all the podcast as well afterwards, sometime afterwards. But tell us what you'll be talking to your guests about, who they'll be, and maybe just a little bit of what they do.
Sure, I'll be happy to share that information. I apologize now in advance because names, I'm very, very bad with names. I'm going to let you know that up front. So as I say these names, y'all, please don't chop me down. Please don't chop me down. After I've repeated a couple of times, then I'll actually catch on. So our guest that we are going to have on the panel is going to be Ben Trentleman. He is from the Utah After School Network. He's the executive director. And then we have Alexis Steens. She is the vice president of field outreach, and she's from After School Alliance. So we're going to sit down and have a conversation about a couple of things. One of the things that we're going to talk about during this conversation is the change in academic needs that students have had within this time period going into COVID, and how we've had to do online learning for students and seeing the effects of online learning, but also how that has affected them socially and emotionally and their personal growth. Also, we want to sit down and talk about the behavior changes that we've seen in students over time compared to before the pandemic and now coming out of the pandemic. Depression and anxiety is at its ultimate high during this time, and having students learning how to manage those feelings but still build confidence and be social with their peers because they've been home for a while. So what does that look like, and how are we helping students deal with those things and help them cope with those emotions that they may be having? Another thing that we'll dive into is how programs have addressed the changes that have been made over time through this experience, how they've adapted, but also taking a look at some of the innovative things that have happened during this time. Because you and I both know we can't continue to do programming how we used to do programming. It's a new world out here. So how do we take the resources that we have and grow them so that it could be in abundance, and share strategies that everyone can use based on the needs of their families and their students and the schools that they serve, as well as the community. Also, we'll have a conversation about funding. So we got a little bit extra, or let me say a lot extra, during the pandemic. So what has that allowed us to do? How that resource has helped? What has professional development done for us during this time? But also how we can continue to advocate for those funds to make sure that we continue to see them moving forward, so we can continue to do the great work that we've been doing. Because if anything, this experience has showed that we are more than willing as professionals in after school time programming. We are willing to rise to the occasion. But in order to rise to that occasion, we do need the proper resources, as well as a number of other things that I'm not going to go ahead and tell you because I don't want to spill the tea on everything. So you got to tune in and listen.
Yes, and all of those things will be spoken about under the umbrella of kind of a look at education. In fact, I think the title of the live stream is called The United States of Education. I believe that's what we're calling it. And we chose guests from across the country. You know, we didn't want to have too many guests, but we wanted a representation of sort of more on the East and one from more to the West, to demonstrate the fact that challenges, resources, and needs can be similar across the nation, but also some are very specific to certain school districts and states. And that's something that certainly interests us and we thought would interest other people. So the big umbrella is kind of a national outlook at what challenges existed before the pandemic, what challenges existed during it. You know, we talked about homeschooling and all those kind of things and funding. And then now that students have come back at all grade levels, what are the behavioral and academic challenges that students, teachers, and parents are facing? So we're going to kind of, take a big, broad, hopefully exciting look, and then get into things about funding and that kind of stuff. So that being said, and thank you for telling us, I think that it's something that is very exciting. And I don't think anybody else is doing anything like this at the conference, so it should be fun. So let's move on to our last kind of question for the day. So the final question for today, as you prepare to head off to Boost, we talked about Boost Itself a little bit and what you'll be doing, which is a great little tease. But, we call the episode Getting Conference Ready. So let's get to the meat of it. What would your suggestions be for those going out to conferences like this, whether they are local or national or, international even in some cases? Maybe that's too big. Maybe let's not go international because then you got to talk about overseas travel and changing money. Let's just stick to in the country. When you're, and there are international conferences for this stuff.
Yes.
But we'll stick to the country, the United States for now. What would your suggestions be for those going to conferences like this?
For going to conferences like this, I will always suggest doing your research. Find out who is going to be there, what type of workshops are going to be taking place. Always look at your accommodations for your rooms, see what that looks like. You do not always have to stay in the hotels that are suggested or given to you. It's nice because it comes at a discount. But if you are taking a group with you, it may be a little bit more affordable if you do an Airbnb or a bread and breakfast that may be in the area or close to the area, if it accommodates you financially. Also, it gives you a little bit more opportunity and flexibility when it comes to food. You could go ahead and buy your groceries at a local market or a local store and make your food that way instead of going out and spending so much money.
Nice. I like that one. You know me.
Save a buck or two. You know what I mean? Another thing I would say, talking about costs of the trip, when you're talking about travel, when you're talking about airfare, when you're talking about all these other things, once you gather all of your research, go ahead and talk to your supervisor, whoever it may be, or even your directors to see if they'll help you cover some of the costs. Some organizations are able to provide professional development funds for their staff, sometimes part-time or full-time, but you never know unless you have a conversation. So go ahead and start to put your pitch together or your presentation together to advocate for you going to the conference, what you'd be able to learn while you're there, and if it ties into any of your learning or your outcomes or academic goals or program goals, go ahead and tie that in there and stress why it is important for you to attend conference and what you'll be getting from conference to help you accomplish those, whatever those goals or those outcomes may be.
Yes. And thinking back to my days in after school education, one of the big things for the organization that I worked for about 6 or 7 years, when we would go, especially if there was some cost that the company was paying, a report out when you came back was not necessarily essential, but I certainly always offered it because the idea being, okay, they've sponsored you to do something or go somewhere or get some benefit, and you're going there to learn. And so bringing back what you can in terms of new ideas, things you can share with your coworkers, all that kind of stuff is very valuable. And it also shows that you went and you listened and you participated and you were there working, taking your notes and that kind of thing. And so, any kind of presentation, whether it's just something you do orally or you put a PowerPoint or whatever together, I think not only doing that when you come back is great, but offering that prior as part of your, like Janice said, once you've done your research and everything, as part of your pitch, make sure you offer to bring that learning back and spread the wealth. And also, actually, I wanted to, something popped in my mind earlier. You were talking about buying your food and cooking. Well, that's a really great idea, not only because it saves you money, but I remember a family trip that we took and we all bought groceries and then the family would cook for everybody. And so all of you, hopefully either you're staying, depending on where you're staying, at least in the same general building or something. And, somebody can cook and then everybody eats every day and everybody takes turns. So that's a great way for team building. Also, if you're going with professional colleagues, it's a great team building thing. I know that's a big thing these days, but I think everybody's always talking about how to build your team and they put these trips and things together. But I think doing something organic that really benefits everybody like that saves money, saves time, and then it brings everybody together, especially at the end of a day. If you all have dinner together, that's a pretty cool thing. Mm-hmm. And you all in the same room, it's just you. Anyway, please continue. I just wanted to put that out there. It's a great communal, fun thing to do is to cook for each other.
Right. And that brings me to my next point. If you are traveling, see if you could bring a colleague with you so you can have someone to help share the workload with you. So if there's a lot of things that you want to do, and I've had to learn this the hard way going to conferences, because I'm the type of person that wants to do 10,000 things all at one time. So, yep. But I am only, don't do that, because I am only one individual. So I can't go to like one conference at 3:45 and then there's another one that starts at 350 that I'm really, really interested in. So if you bring an additional person with you, either a colleague or even a family friend that may be in the same field of work, not only to help cut some of the costs, because you'll end up splitting the costs for the trip, but also splitting some of the workshops or attending some of the workshops so you can work together and putting end result presentation together when you all come back.
And also to split the driving if you have to drive long distances. That's not fun.
Ooh, Lord, no, it ain't. It shouldn't have been. But and also it gives you a time to bond with each other and build relationships, like Chris said. You know, bring some Uno cards. Go ahead and have, once all the work is done, go ahead, play a game of Uno, like the kids aren't around. Or a game of spades, or even Jenga. It gives you time to bond and, like you said, Chris, do team building at the same time, but also get to know each other a little better. I enjoyed those experiences, going to conferences and be able to bond with my colleagues and learn a little bit more about them outside of the office. So that's a great opportunity as well. But then it also gives you a chance to tackle different things. Maybe you have someone from the finance department. So if there's anything going on about finance, that person could take care of that. Maybe you have two people going with you from the front line, maybe two other program directors or staffers going with you at the conference. So there may be someone focusing down on strategy. There may be another person that's focusing down on student engagement. There may be another person that want to tackle all of the transitional or social emotional learning that's going on or that's at the conference. So once you have those areas that each person is focused on, you could kind of divide and conquer in that way. And once you have all that information, come back to the table at the end of the day or closer to end of conference and be like, okay, what did you learn? And start to make a plan for how you all can implement it once you get back to your site or once you get back to the organization.
Those are really, really great points. And I think we can go into the home stretch maybe a little bit. I do want us to talk about safety because, you know, that was a big one for me. And then we'll kind of get your final thoughts. Mm-hmm. And then we'll see about a professionals lounge before we wrap it all up. So let's talk about safety. You know, we kind of already touched on it a little bit in talking about traveling with friends or colleagues. And that's definitely something you want to do. Doesn't matter if you're male or female. If you're going somewhere that you're unfamiliar with, especially in this case, going literally across the other side of the country, it is something where, you know, everybody needs to stay safe. There's a lot going on out there. There always is. But especially if it's unfamiliar and it's your first time, what are your thoughts in terms of what are you thinking about for your safety this trip? And then also, what are some tips that you would give folks for general, I mean, not just conferences really, but, you know, we're talking about it from a professional point of view right now. But what do you think in terms of traveling safety?
Traveling safety, with a lot of things going on, especially people disappearing and human trafficking going on, is very important to be careful. Make sure that you tell someone where you are going and if there's any stops that you're going to be making within the process. Let them know that you've gotten there safely, wherever that stop is, but also that you're leaving that stop. So if there's anything happen, they know where's the last place you were. As you're traveling to and from your destination. Also, like I said, bring an additional person or additional people with you, not just for course-wise, but safety-wise, and you all travel together. And please make sure that you are not traveling by yourself anywhere. I know we all grown, right? But in the sense of safety, I take it back to the old school rule. Like if one of you go, all of you got to go. Because there's power in numbers. And if someone has tried to overcome one of you, they got to take all of you.
She's from New York, y'all, so. But it's good.
That's all.
She knows how to survive.
That's all the city coming out in me. But traveling just one additional person, if not two, just to make sure that you have that extra set of eyes with you as you're traveling about and you're going, and being aware of your surroundings. Make sure that you're looking around front, back, and side. Another thing to think about is when you are going out, if you're going out in public to relax and you might be taking a drink or you might not, always be mindful of your cup and where you place it. And if you happen to abandon it or leave it, do not pick it back up and take any sips out of that cup, just for a safety reason, because you never know who's around you and who's watching you.
And similar to that, again, male or female, if you go to a nice little bar and somebody offers to buy you a drink, make sure you watch the bartender pour that drink. Don't let them bring it to you. Just saying, because generally when there are big conferences, and this is a big one for the nonprofit education or after school programming rather, folks that live there, they know those big conferences are coming. So they know there's going to be a lot of out of town folks who are unfamiliar and that kind of thing. So, you know, again, this is just the world we live in. We try to keep it nice and fun and light on the show, even though, sometimes it's just not possible. So saying, make sure that you are always aware of your surroundings when it comes to things that you are imbibing or eating or whatever. And, have fun, but stay safe doing it. What else did you have there?
Travel safety. I think those were all the things that I had.
Well, I have one last one.
Okay, what's your last one?
And this is personal, but it's also for everybody else. We talked about kind of doing those, letting people know where you are and that kind of thing. Well, in the same vein, as you're traveling, if your partner is not with you or your family members or whatever, in addition to letting them know where you're going and like when you're expected and if you got there, make sure that you have kind of check-in times. So maybe not during the day when you're trying to attend your sessions and doing that kind of thing, but at night, or after, the thing is over for the day, make sure there's a text or a call. And then at night, and, again, maybe this isn't for everybody. I grant you that. But for me, as a husband who very much loves his wife and wants her to be safe, I want to make sure she is good at the end of every day. See how the day went. It's not just for a check-in on that, on safety, but it's also just to see how the day went and how things are going. Offer support, because if people are far away from you and, you're their significant person, and it's important to have that, to keep that connection strong, not just for safety, but for support. So, any last thoughts before we head into our Professionals Lounge?
Yes. Do your best while you're at conference to take advantage of networking opportunities. So sometimes during conference, they'll have, like, after all the workshops are done, they'll have certain events that'll take place, maybe a scavenger hunt or maybe a sip and paint, things along those lines, a chance for you to unwind, but also get to know different people from different organizations. If you can, try your best to engage in some of those activities, because you never know who you could meet. But you also never know who your next employer could be based on who you connect with at conference. So always keep those things in mind. But it's also a good way to get your organization out there, but also your brand out there too, because you keep in mind that you are a brand. You came with a specific skill and you're coming to sharpen a skill. So it's good a chance for you to advertise yourself and your capabilities as an individual, but also show your skill and your talents based on your skill set and what you do well. So use that time to network, pass around your card, or have a digital card with you. I can completely support a digital card, which I got for conference.
And cloud storage also is
important.
Oh,
yeah. And get all the cloud storage that you need to take all the pictures.
Yeah. And to finish up on that networking point too, it really is true. Fortunately or unfortunately, you can make the best use of both, but it's not always what you know. It is who you know. And sometimes it is who you impress with a good attitude. It's not even impressing them necessarily with your depth of knowledge, but employers like someone with a good attitude. And if you're at a conference or somewhere that most people, maybe, they're like, all right, I got to come, whatever. But if you go in there with a good attitude and you look prepared and ready to go, that leaves a good impression on everybody. And I want to throw this in too. One thing that we did for this conference that actually should be done for all of them, we did it specifically because she's going to capture content, but making a checklist. Now, some folks out there may think that they are super organized and don't need that kind of thing, but
that is not me.
No, it isn't, which is why I told her to make this list. She's taking some equipment, and we want to make sure that, it all leaves the house and that it all comes back to the house because I cannot bring her anything in California. So, whatever you're going for, if you're traveling for something, obviously to create content, then absolutely please make a checklist of not only your equipment, but of what you need to do. Look at the schedule of the event and kind of map out what you'll be doing in between times and that kind of a thing to make sure you get everything that you can out of it. And then even if you're just traveling for, just to report back or just to go, make sure you make a checklist of things for yourself, because if you're traveling a good distance, you don't want to be caught short in any way, especially if you're traveling on the plane. You definitely want to make sure everything is accounted for and that you are ready to do what you need to do. So with all that being said, let's jump into our Professionals Lounge.
Professionals Lounge is a segment of the show that allows guests to share advice with other practitioners in the OST and youth development field about how they can begin growing their gifts and talents, but also develop themselves as professionals in the field. Here's our Professionals Lounge conversation.
Well, considering that this entire episode in its way was a professionals lounge, why don't we treat this one like a wrap up? And we'll have Janice talk about sort of what kind of content you all can look forward to from Boost, but also maybe what some of the plans are in the near future for School After Hours. I know you've advertised a little bit of our new merchandise shop, which will be expanding soon, and the consulting portion of your business as we continue to expand the podcast. You want to talk a little bit about, it doesn't have to be a lot, if you want to keep some cards close to the chest, but take this opportunity to make it your own professionals lounge, to advertise yourself. What's going on and what's going to go on?
Ooh, for starting with the conference. So for conference, we're going to be walking around. And when I say we, I have a colleague that's going with me from another organization, Jasmine. She is with the Enrico Education Foundation. She's a senior director of one of their 21st century centers. So she'll be going with me on this trip to capture some content, have some conversations, visit some workshops, and we're going to make a plan on how we're going to implement this later on when we come back to our sites and when I come back to the business. And I'll take a little bit more about the business in this wrap up. So for Boost, we'll go around, go to different workshops, see if we could have some conversations, some in-depth conversations about the state of education and where it is, but also how our after-school programming is adapting to the needs of children, families, and communities, wherever our audience may be. Some of our guests might be from the East Coast, from the West Coast, from down south, or up north somewhere. So depending on who we're able to engage with and who's willing to do a small 5-second or 5-minute conversation with us about the workshops that they have experienced, what they've enjoyed, what they've learned, and how they're going to implement it when they go back. Well, we'd love to have those conversations, and those conversations will be something that we'll present over time during the year. So you can hear some of the things that we're doing, but also know why professional development is important for out-of-school time professionals as well as educators in the field of education, because without your development of your skills, it's very hard to go as far as you want to without the knowledge and the skill. So we'll be sharing that information with you over time, and also sharing that information out with Boost as well. For the podcast interview, they'll also have that information, and hopefully they'll be able to share it sometime throughout the year as well. But you could catch us on IG, and I might save it and repost it. That's still up for conversation and thought. I'm still thinking about it.
Yes, and there is some yard work being done outside, folks. So if you hear a noise, we're just letting you know now.
Right.
There's a little yard work going on outside the doors. But anyway, please keep going.
And then we'll also present or have our shop 1 or 2 merchandise items or T-shirts from the shop available. We'll be wearing them, but you can also order them once you scan my digital card, my digital business card. Yes,
your brand new dot card.
Yeah, my brand new dot card.
Yes, it's very cool technology. I didn't even know about it. Very cool, and hopefully we'll have some good networking opportunities out there that will help with that.
And we basically started the store for advertising a little bit about after school programming, but also education at the same time with some of our T-shirts that we have for not just the children, but also for the adults that support education and out of school time programming. And wanted to give you all a different feel. As time goes on, we'll also have some digital products available for you all, thinking more of the lines of in after school programming, like what are some of the things that you need, like checklists of things to do for when you are going through your process of onboarding. What do you want programming or your schedule to look like? Also planning a timeline to plan what you want your sessions or your semesters to look like for school, all those things. So I'm in the process of developing those things now. So when the school year for next year comes out, they'll be available to you all, and you can check them out on our store. Another thing that we're doing is consulting for after school time programming. So that is the business on top of or within a School After Hours podcasting. I've been able to connect with other independent program providers and help them get their after-school programming or their programs together in the sense of helping them develop their curriculums, what they want it to look like, what kind of engaging activities they want their students to do based on the concept that they have. So I have a client right now that does mentoring for young men. So, and having those conversations, talking about value, talking about self-respect, talking about community. Another thing, talking about self-worth and, believe it or not, what dating is and what that looks like in building relationships.
Well,
don't be fooled. They out here dating, y'all. Don't tell yourselves that lie. They out here dating.
And it actually, hearing you say all that, that might be a good topic for an episode sometime. But yes, so the School After Hours umbrella, now it includes the podcast, the shop, the consulting, which is really cool because it includes curriculum creation, program development, and also program evaluation. And you can actually find all that information on the website. I'm very proud of her. She's doing a great job, and you should definitely hire her. But she really is good. Even if I wasn't married to her, I would say the same thing. And then I think we have one more thing. Oh, yes.
Yes, we are looking into starting our YouTube channel for our podcast in the 4th season of School After Hours, which will start in August of this year because schools go back a little bit early depending on where you are. So we're looking into go ahead and starting a channel for School After Hours and podcasting. So it gives you a chance to give a visual look at our guests, but also a little bit more access to the content that we'll be presenting as we go further into our development for School After Hours. We'll get a little program stuff, you'll get education stuff, you'll get life stuff, because we don't talk enough about the things that happens behind the scenes as you are a staffer or someone that's working in different levels of after school time programming, and some of the adjustments in life work balance that you have to juggle in order to do this in this profession, but also any profession working with children. So I think that's important to give you a sense of the life experiences that we have to go through as leaders in this field of work.
Well, thank you very much. It sounds like there are exciting times coming for School After Hours. And thank you for allowing me to guest host today.
Of course, boo.
And, let's go ahead into the normal wrap-up.
If you enjoyed this episode and feel you received some good information, give us a review on Apple Podcasts or visit the Podchaser website and leave us a comment. This will help us get feedback on the show and collect testimonials for our personal website. Share us. Share us with your friends, share us with your family, share us with your network. Help us spread the word about how out-of-school time programming is impacting our youth as well as our communities. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. Well, that's all I have for today. In the words of Mr. Arthur Ashe, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Until next time, bye-bye.